Hey, it's Debbie Potts, and I want to record a part two to my Wild Health Clarity report that I had on a podcast interview with Dr. Matt Dawson. And I just thought it's such an interest to me, and I thought you might be curious as well to see how genetic reports work and what we can do with that information. Now, I'll share my screen, so watch the video. I have done different reports in the past, as this one from Strategene, Seeking Health, Dr. Ben Lynch's company. I have done the DNA company and DNA Fit originally. They got bought out, and some other company owns them. And then I have this other report that I got from GX, Nutrient Personal Report, Genetic Direction. And I just like to compare it all because it's my genetics. So shouldn't they all be saying the same thing? So I wanted to just bring those all on a screen. Now, if you've done 23andMe, I did this in 2020, that you may still be able to, I'm not sure, get a free report on genetic gene, give a donation. And this is my detox profile. And then they have a methylation profile. And I always find this curious because if you know my story, I went from high performing age group triathlete, endurance athlete, marathoner, long distance cycling event type of overdoer, probably a little bit in my old life, the old me. Switched 2013, I got adrenal exhaustion. I'll put air quotes around that because I don't know exactly if that's what it is. It's just a combination of imbalances in my body leading to metabolic chaos, we say as FDN practitioners. So who knows exactly what it is, but chronic stress, as I say, impacts everything. And if you continue to do everything too much or have deficiencies, you're going to have imbalances and be dysfunctional. And that's what happened to me. So I was curious over the years, okay, why did that happen to me? And I know other people that can thrive having a crazy schedule and thrive training and over racing and under recovery. But what about me? So I got into genetics. And if you're not familiar, Strategene is a great place to start too. It's a little more detailed and confusing for those who don't know about methylation cycle. But the Strategene is Dr. Ben Lynch's company, Seeking Health. And you can see I did this in 2019, but looking at how do you even read your genetics? So in Strategene, for example, green, wild type, heterologous SNP is yellow dash, and then homo is red, and no SNP data. So you can see on reports, at least the Strategene report gives all this information, and you can look and see what all those mean. And when it's red, I kind of want to look more so at it. When it's yellow, it's like, oh, I should take that into account. But you can go into this bottom of each page. You can look, I want to know my folate methylation cycle, folate cycle, and it'll show you kind of what speeds things up and what slows things down. And then you can look at this, where was it? The glossary, and then bonus, there's a summary page. It's a little easier. So you can look at your summary, core SNPs, and get an idea what's going on. And then bonus kind of explains it all on one page. So those are the bonus SNPs. Now, you can get all this information. Well, what do you do with it, right? How can you take this information, do something? So you can look at Strategene. I've also done podcasts with the DNA company, and I find this is interesting. They have all these reports and hormones, body, for example. You can go through and look at, if you have optimal, normal, suboptimal, or pores. That might make more sense reading it that way for you. And then it'll kind of give you an introduction. Then here's all the genes they'll look at in this profile. Look at the different SNPs so you can see what they are and one more in profile. This one is, for example, on hormones, so estrogen balance profile, and looking at those with estrogen, normal levels, but tend to produce more antigens. So you can look at if you are more balanced or not. So females, males, outcome. So I might carry an increased likelihood of estrogen toxicity. I have a normal likelihood, experience symptoms of acne, hair loss, normal, excess body and facial hair, normal. Boo, cellulite. You're more likely to see the development of cellulite in your body. We don't want that. Now, genes that may influence your hormone dominance. So, anyways, you can get these reports if you upload your genetics or take the test from the DNA company. I found there's reports are really interesting. And then you can work with ideally your coach to help figure out this information. So, the DNA company, we did a podcast with one of the co-founders, but they have this great list of different reports that you can get on your system summary, but your fitness you can look at and nutrition and cardiovascular health and all that. So it's kind of cool. So then you can look at nutrition and sleep and to kind of take this information into your program. So we can personalize your information to figure out, all right, here are my genetics, here are my lifestyle habits, epigenetics, and let's look at your best nutrition and exercise, sleep, stress, movement, really grow more what I call the holistic approach, figure out what to do. Now, we also did a recent podcast with True Diagnostic to look at my true age. So you can get this report if you do your True Diagnostic test. It's also a saliva test. You can get all this data. And then also had from True Diagnostic, we did a podcast with Hannah, but you can look into that. Kind of interesting too. So what do you do? Put this all together and figure out what's best for you. Now, different approaches as well. Health Clarity Report, which I really like their layout. So it's a very long report. It is 46 pages. But what they do at Wild Health is a program that you do the epigenetics, do the functional lab testing, the blood chemistry panel, and you meet with a health coach and your doctor, and you go through this program with them. And now macronutrients, I can tell based on my SNPs, and I should back up and say, okay, what are SNPs? So let's go through this DNA report page I put in to share with you. Understanding genetics. So to best understand these different genetic reports, here's the genetic 101 Q&A. So what is a gene? A gene is a segment of the DNA molecule that contains instruction manual to how to operate you for how, when, and where your body makes each of the many thousands of proteins required for life. Each gene is comprised of multiple combinations of 4 letters that make up your genetic code: A, T, C, and G. So those are the 4 letters that are used. Now, each gene combines these letters in various ways, spelling out the words. So your operation manual for you that specify which amino acid is needed at every step in the process of making the proteins required your body to develop and function. So what is required for your body to develop and function at its optimal level? What are the polymorphisms? What are the gene polymorphisms? Now, all of us have small differences in the information our DNA contains, and it's these differences that can make us unique. So there's slight changes in the genetic code that are present in at least 1% of the population. So the example here, one genetic letter, remember the 4 letters A, T, C, or D, may be replaced by another. These polymorphisms can lead to different processes in the body by just altering one letter in a word can completely change its meaning. When the change affects only one genetic letter, it is called a single nucleotide polymorphism, or SNP. SNP. You'll see which of these SNPs you possess under your result on the tables. So nutrition plus genetics is nutrigenetics. Nutrigenetics is a study of the effects of our individual genetic variations in response to our diet, exercise, and lifestyle, all of which can cause the genes to be expressed in different ways. Nutrigenetics help us identify how to progress on our journey towards our own optimal health. So you can see the example. If your ACE gene, ACE, DD, strong association is 2 dots on the DNA or DNA fit report. If you have PPARG, you have pro, that means 1 dot, medium association. If you have the TCF7L2, for examples, and you get a CC, that dash means no association. Now, with the Wild Health Program, the Clarity Report puts them into categories. So this is why I think it's pretty more impactful of how to get your genetics and your lab tests all into one, and then we figure out what's best for you, the unique individual. So here's my report on diet nutrition for an example. My genetic predisposition to fat, carb, saturated fats. So you can see the dial to the left is optimal, suboptimal, not so great over on the far right, the orangey color. So you can see which SNPs I have, 2 alleles or 1, and then 0. And then there's the missing SNPs or the gray. Okay, so you can see for me, I'm kind of in the middle. And then my fat tolerance is a little higher, saturated fat. And so that's why I try to limit. I can feel nauseous if I have too much saturated fat sometimes. So try to watch that. Now, APO status, you probably have APO3 you've heard about. And I'm a 3-3. You can learn more about that. It's a good one to know. Carb-related labs. What do they use at Wild Health to figure out what is my carb tolerance? Because this is looking at my blood chemistry markers, A1C, fasting glucose, insulin they didn't use, but HOMO-IR, 0.96, and my triglycerides to HDL level are my carb-related labs. Now, the lipid panel related labs here are just total cholesterol, which mine's higher, HDL, LDL, triglycerides. So that's another topic. Now, macronutrients, it's just a template, but this is where I adjust. And then if we focus, as I've been talking about protein first and then fat and carbs, if we did your metabolic tests, as I do with Pinoe in North San Diego, Del Mar, Solana Beach, if we do your resting metabolism test, I can identify approximately how many calories you need at rest. And then we can figure out, are you efficient at burning fat or not at rest? And then during exercise, we do your active metabolism test. And then we can help figure out your macros a little bit more there. And then again, I'll go back to this, but your macros, I like to start with protein because we know we're trying to build muscle, not lose it as we get older. And we're doing that 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, as Dr. Gabrielle Lyon talks about. For athletes, especially, we need a little higher. And aging women, we need a little higher. So I strive for that goal of 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. And then we adjust nature's carbs based on our exercise, women, your menstrual cycle, and 2, our insulin resistance, as we have more insulin insensitivity as we get around that menopause age. Now, healthy fats, this is where we can alter based on your genetics. So it's kind of cool. Now, macronutrients, we know that carbs have 4 calories per gram, protein has 4 calories, and fat has 9 calories. So when you eat fat, that's why I think people that went too deep into keto and were not losing weight were eating probably too much fat because they were getting way too many calories and not looking at the reason we have this ratio of eating more fat and healthy fats, healthy proteins that you should, if you eat the right amount for your metabolic type, feel full and satiated after you eat and not have cravings. And also looking at your microbiome. But that is a big part of, going for more fat and protein. Now, the recommendations here kind of, I think, standard until they get more personalization, but the AI generated report says insulin resistance score is moderate for me. So they suggest, without knowing my history, fasting 16-8, maybe some prolonged fasting, again, not on exercise days. Consider high fat, low carb, or ketogenic diet depending on your genetic predisposition. Regular exercise plan, consult with your physician. So, magnesium, 500 milligrams a night is what they suggest. LDL is elevated, and you have a genetic risk for saturated fat. So, reduce saturated fat intake 20 grams a day, I think it says. Okay, so that is a little more information for you on me, but I'm genetically sensitive to carbohydrates, and I've seen this in all the reports. So as I said, I like to go through and read these reports from these different companies and go into their suggestions and how they interpret the genetics. So this one was more vitamins, and then DNA company. I didn't pull up, but you can look back at what you can learn from the DNA Fit or the DNA company, see if they all say the same thing. So I'm genetically sensitive to carbohydrates, which I have seen across the board. And this is why I do better, reducing simple carbs and consider a low carb, higher fat approach. I tolerate fat well and may consume fat as desired, but remember my saturated fat I need to limit because I have LDL cholesterol, they say, is elevated genetic, but it's more so my genetic risk for saturated fat because I don't think LDL, there's a argument on that LDL and saturated fat. So that's where you have to put it together, figure out what works best for you. Putting this all in pieces of the puzzle together. Metabolism and vitamins is another section. And knowing about the methylation cycle, folate. So if we look at my strategy report, was back here, that you can really see the genetic or my methylation cycle on folate. You can see how confusing this is and how my cycle works for the folate cycle. So that explains the folate related SNPs. And then you take that, it's over here, and then we're going to go here. And then we can look at this cycle. How am I? So methylation, I have homocysteine blood marker. And with my genetics and the blood marker homocysteine, the computer AI report, Clarity, comes out to my risk borderline. And my choline risk score is in here with these genetic SNPs. Folate risk score, sorry, and TMO. So you can see choline related labs for the blood chemistry is AST and ALT, was related to liver. Choline as well. And folate related labs are my B12 marker and folate. So I'm lower in folate, and TMAO, total cholesterol, is related, but I didn't have any TMO measured. So that's kind of how they look at methylation recommendations based on my homocysteine and my genetics. So I have elevated choline requirement. Consider consumption of foods, high level choline as eggs, fish, dairy, green vegetables. Consider creatine. And they like Thorne brand. So metabolism, I just think it's so fascinating to see all this. So looking at omega-3s, my vitamin D, vitamin A, B12, vitamin E, and looking at how my blood chemistry panel relates to these recommendations based on my genetics. So I have an increased sensitivity to gluten and wheat based on the gene SH2B3. If you have symptoms of abdominal bloating, diarrhea, nausea, brain fog after consuming wheat or gluten, consider removing, reducing these ingredients. So I have done the wheat zoomer and done many podcasts on that. You can see that I am reactive to wheat and gluten, all parts of wheat, and I have to remove it. So my genetics show that. Now, caffeine, the gene CYP1A2, I'm a faster metabolizer. I might find athletic performance caffeine with exercise. So try limit in the day. I do not do well with caffeine later in the day. I'll tell you that. I'll be up all night. So, anyways, I won't bore you, but that's the report, what it looks like. And it goes on and on. Kryptonite foods, superfoods. Based on my genetics, I should avoid these foods as much as possible. Sugar is inflammatory. We know that. Contributes to increased insulin resistant, accelerate aging, poor body composition. Wheat and gluten leads to inflammation, all the negative effects that come with it. Vegetable oils and processed foods are not good for me. So gluten sensitivity, I want to look out for that. And then inflammation with omega-6. I'm sensitive to this and should avoid processed vegetable oils, as everyone should. Soy, sunflower oil more. And I don't have a celiac variant, so that's not identified, but it does mean I still have gluten sensitivity. And then what are good foods? Based on my genetics, I should focus on adding or increasing the following in my diet. Fish, smash fish. Several SNPs that make sardines, which I hate sardines. Ideal for me, and they're clean content of omega-3s, collagen, protein, and other key vitamins and nutrients. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cruciferous vegetables. So that's how it works. You can ask me if you want to get a discount on this, but the labs that look at the superfoods, look at the genetics. I'm a poor conversion of SNP for ALA, the plant form of omega-3s, to EPA. If I'm a vegan, I'm not going to probably get as much as my essential fatty acids. So I need to go for fish, grass-fed, free-range animals, get my omega-3 human krill oil. I have a gene SNP for BCMO1, low vitamin A. So looking for higher organ meats, which I tend to try to do more from a capsule because I'm not doing organ meats. So other foods is eggs. I do hard goat cheese. I like goat cheese, and liver enzymes. So that is such good information. Now, I did want to finish a couple things. Here's when we do a blood chemistry. Now, there's optimal versus normal, and the doctor's test that you'll get will be normal range. And in FDN, as a practitioner, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, we act, I think, as more of a health investigator, putting the piece of the puzzle together. So I found this guide from selfdecode.com, and this is a great checklist you can check out. Self-decode lab test. Now, this has a little free PDF, optimal versus normal ranges. And I really find it sad that our medical system, our traditional medicine, our doctors are using these old ranges, or based on normal ranges are not optimal. So that normal is based on sick population is what I've heard. So we don't want to look at folic acid. We want to look at folate, and look at that as your vitamin D9, B9. And then looking at what labs to look at. So your nutrient levels, here we can look at all these, and then it'll tell you thyroid, what ones to get for thyroid. And I use Rupa Health to order a lot of tests, or through our medical director at FDN, or you can order blood chemistry panel yourself on my Alta Labs link. But iron, B12, D3, a CBC, CMP, or thyroid panel, inflammatory markers will all help you with energy. If you want to look at weight loss, you can look at these guys. Toxic exposure, we'd look at those liver enzymes, ALT, AST, ALT, GGT, and all these, uric acid, bilirubin, thyroid. And then women, hormone balance, fertility. Look at all these hormones. So it's nicely presented. It's a free PDF on self-decode. Methylation cycle, look at your folate, B12, active B12, and your homocysteine. Gut health, a zonulin and a leaky gut test. Heart health, what we want to look at, blood sugar. ApoB, your cholesterol, HDL, LDL, but your omega-3 deep index. So we want to look at that. Leptin, a CBC, LP little a, oxidized LDL, small LDL, very low density lipoproteins and triglycerides. What's usually on your report from your doctor? Just this one, cholesterol, your blood sugar, but not your insulin. And you're not getting any of these probably. And triglycerides you should get, but this is what we're missing. Now, aging, here are the aging ones: growth hormone, IGF-1, sex hormones, metabolic panel, lipid, thyroid. Toxic mold, I'm gonna look at those labs so you can look at more from self-decode. So hopefully that gives you a little info. I did want to do a follow-up podcast video on stomach acid, how to test for stomach acid levels, as most people are low. But on your labs, you can find this article in Dr. Jockers. I'll put it in the show notes. But low chloride levels, one of the main components of stomach acid, hydrochloric acid, is chloride. So when we see low chloride levels, blood under 100, a sign of low HCl, getting your serum and serum protein and serum globulin levels tested. That will tell you some information. Liver enzymes as well, liver or low phosphorus, high BUN. So all these different labs are really important to get checked if low stomach acid, because we can get our genetics, but what do we want to look at from our blood chemistry, getting all this information and seeing what is the best nutrition for us, but how well are you absorbing the foods? What foods are you getting? Because if you're not digesting your food properly because of low stomach acid or low digestive enzymes or and SIBO and other issues as H. pylori, you want to look at this lab testing. So you can get your homocysteine levels checked, see if your B12's low, but we want to look at what these optimal levels are as MCV, MCH, MCH, CHC, because that can tell us a lot of information. Because if you are low in your stomach acid, you can have all these symptoms. So what you eat, we can figure out from a food sensitivity test, looking at your genetics, look at your blood chemistry panel. But even more than that, let's look at how you are digesting your food. Look at signs and symptoms as I do my nutritional therapy assessment I give clients. So some things to think about when you're trying to do all the right things, but you can't figure out what is wrong. So those are my thoughts for today. Let me know if you want me to dive in a little deeper. Have a great one.